So without further ado, Nicoline is going to get us through some quick slides, some reflections, important reflections, and then I'll come back later on to explain what we're going to do with that. Over to you, Nicoline.
Unmute always does help as well. Thanks a lot. I almost feel like I don't have to present because as we've noticed from the previous two storytellers, women do seem to be important in livestock. So go home. However, I will present a little bit and Ewan will also take us through the future and what else we should be doing. So just to give a background, as some of you might need to know, is what I call it all things gender in livestock. How do we actually work? Well, we have CGR gender scientists contributing throughout, and so we have ILRI, misspelled there, the Alliance. There's different percentages that support these people, from a few percentage to a bigger amount, such as 20% for the gender coordinator, which I've been over the last 3 years. The bilateral funding provides the rest, provides some of the rest of the funding for the gender scientists, and this can be sometimes between 6 to 15%, and so that often means that gender scientists are sort of stretched across because they don't get that much time. But we're getting gender-led projects, and I'll mention some of that. So what do we have? We have basically 2 entry points. We have the CRP overall, and then we have the flagship level. We have basically also within that 3 sort of approaches of how we do it, through influence, through developing methods, and through developing evidence. So then if you look across the flagships, we basically pick up, as across the flagships, what you would call pick up themes that are important, but might not actually be done in the flagship. So the 3 that I mentioned here are entrepreneurship, decision-making at household level, and livestock as an asset to transform relationships. These are also to inform and lead some of that discussion. So it's not only always being the handmaiden of, but that this will also inform the flagships. Then the other level of work that we do, and that you will have noticed, especially in the last few discussions, is actually at flagship level. So we actually work in the flagships. So we have gender experts working across each of the flagships. So for instance, Alessandra, she's basically involved with genetics. The environment is Renee and Dina at ICARDA. Animal health, I work a lot on. Forages, I will be honest, we all work on it, although recently Renee has been working on it a little more. We used to have a postdoctoral fellow there as well. LAFS, which is our home. And what I find neat about all these gender researchers is that they do have a technical understanding of the area of work. I mean, simple example, I've spent 6 years working on animal health at FAO. So we are gender specialists, but we also have a very good technical understanding. And apologies, there's supposed to be a circle around livestock and the environment as well. Now, just a few highlights, and these are only highlights, and that's part of what we're going to have a discussion afterwards, but feeds and forages, a lot of people have already mentioned this G-feast, but we're also doing a Bracharia study as part of a great, but we've also done work in South America with SIAT, looking at the whole issue of what is out there on information about gender and feeds and forages. On animal health, you've already heard the community conversations, but 2 other areas that we've also discussed, we also have funding for, and that is also mapped to here, is phages and gender, where we're doing a project with animal health, looking at salmonella and women and goat and chicken. So of course, that's a nice one. And gender and vaccines in Ghana with funding from IDRC, where we're looking at PPR in Newcastle, and also looking at accommodative and transformative approaches on gender. Then the other one that we also have been working on that's quite innovative is livestock master plans. How do we actually get gender into livestock master plans? Seeing, as we always argue, and we do have the data to show for it, that women are involved in the livestock system. And so if we're doing a livestock master plan to invest in societies or in the sector, why not make sure women also get access Then we also have the laughs and genetics, where, for instance, we've developed a framework of where in the process of selecting genetics you include gender. But we also have a very specific project, Women in Poultry Businesses, and Alessandra is leading that, and she's online if anybody has any questions on that. The environment, Renee has been working on a review of gender and sustainable land management, which has also been well received. Just some examples, and I'm sure they're not all, and I'm sure there are more out there. And as we saw, ACGG is one area where especially the CRP in the beginning invested a lot to get the gender going. Now, what we want to do in the last sort of phase of the CRP is bring some of these stories together. And so we have selected 4 themes to make the whole. So one is empowerment through livestock. One is women in livestock business. How does it work? Another one, it would be about scaling. How does scaling work? And then another one is capabilities, with which we mean, how do we actually give women the capabilities to do the research, or to use livestock for empowerment. And at this point, I leave it over to Ewan.
And this was just when my audio setup was not working. So luckily I just could pick up your final line. Great. Thank you. So thank you very much, Nicoline, for this quick retrospective on what has been going on, what is going on in livestock in terms of gender work. I think a lot of really, really exciting work in the making. Also a very big donor agenda. So again, this is, even for those of you who are not looking at this as this is not my natural area of research, it's just part of the package now, talking about packages. So we're going to break up. We've been listening quite a bit. You've been voting, but that's not quite fully engaging. So what we wanted to do is just send you out to breakout groups of about 5-6 people, to reflect on these 3 questions that, that Nicoline has put there, and to basically at the end report back on either of the answers to these questions, and certainly to the last one. So the first question is, what do you see, what do you think gender legacies should, livestock should leave? So what this program should leave about in terms of all the gender work that's been going on that would be of importance for the future, for future gender work, for the follow-up program to the CRP, and for all the people involved in the program in a general way. The second question is how, so this is like flipping back a typical question. The typical question is, how can gender research contribute to? This time around, we'd like to flip the question and ask you, how can agricultural research, agriculture and agricultural research contribute to gender equality? What can it do differently to contribute to gender equality in and of its own? And finally, because gender affects all of us every day, what can you personally do about contributing to gender work in livestock? Whether it be just informing yourself, getting involved, getting trained, doing some work, working with a gender team, hiring some people, I don't know, there's so many different options that you can think about. So what is it that you suggest doing? Your 15% solution for what you're going to do about gender work in livestock in the future.